Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today we're talking running backs going as RB3's that I think can finish as top 12 running backs on the season, RB1's. We've got 3 guys for you today. Again, all these guys will be going anywhere from, the RB25 slot to I think my highest is like RB39 or so. If you guys didn't check out yesterday's video, we did wide receivers. These guys were wide receiver 4s with the upside to finish as wide receiver 1s. So if you haven't watched that video, be sure to go check that out. Click down below, subscribe to the channel, get those post notifications on. It is August 1st. I think I said it was August yesterday, but it's technically, today is August. We are very close to the NFL season, getting your fantasy getting ready for your drafts. Would love to hear what picks you guys have. I also find that the comments have been very stale lately. There's a lot of people that usually the ones that think I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about. I love the you don't know ball comments we get in a lot of the YouTube shorts. But if you guys are looking for any types of videos, we're going to have a Superflex mock coming this week. If you're looking for any other advice, we haven't talked tight ends or quarterbacks a lot. I do want to do that, although YouTube doesn't seem to like that on the old algorithm, but that's fine. We will cover it at some point. But let me know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. Let's get into these 3 players. Again, be sure to hit that sub button and like the video if you do enjoy. All right, our first guy. Player we talked about a month or so ago as a sleeper. I want to make sure I talk about him again. It is Rashad Penny of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's currently going as the RB36 in the early parts of the 9th round. So when I first talked about him, I think he was around RB39, so he's moving up a little bit, moved up a full round from his previous ADP. And DeAndre Swift is going significantly farther ahead than Rashad Penny is. Swift is in that like RB2 category, firmly in the RB2 category. For Penny, he's nearly in the RB4 category. So I'm very excited about where his ADP is at because the value in the running back position for this Eagles offense is not as a pass catcher. Their 11.3% target rate to running backs was one of the league's lowest last season. I know Miles Sanders had a great year. He has a profile as a great pass catcher, but Sanders was in a role where, I saw him as a player that not only was he a solid pass catcher, but that wasn't where he returned his value. He's posted 50 reception season, but where he returned his value was scoring touchdowns. And Sanders was a guy just like Penny that was being drafted as an RB3 that finished as a top 12 back on the season. Penny can replicate that because, again, like I mentioned, the Eagles, there were only 2 teams that ran the ball inside the 5-yard line more than the Eagles. Those were the Cowboys and, of course, the Lions. So there's a great opportunity here with things changing. We talked about this with receivers. If you're looking for upside, the best way to find it is finding players that enter new offenses where there's question marks of who's going to take over. There's going to be value to be found there. Or for teams I like even more is scheme changes is where team players can elevate. But for Penny, the reason I see him being the guy that profiles as the better goal line back, we saw Swift last season with the Lions with a gigantic opportunity to have a huge fantasy season. He only had 4 carries inside the 5 last season of the 38 Detroit had. Penny also a bigger bodied back, very physical. His abilities after contact are great. He averaged the most yards after contact per touch at 4.23 yards on his 57 rushing attempts last season, averaged 6.1 yards per carry. He had the 5th best elusive rating from PFF. This is a guy they make people miss. Isn't afraid to take on contact. And as well, I was shocked to see he averaged over 7 defenders in the box per rush attempt last year, which was really good when you consider how efficient he was. That's a lot of guys in the box, and he was 1st in true yards per carry. So I love Penny's profile to be able to be that guy for the Eagles. Of course, you have Jalen Hurts stealing touchdowns, but that didn't matter when this offense was as good as it was last year. And I think his propensity to miss time and how the chance that he isn't a player that does miss time this season, that's baked into his ADP. Like he's in the best offense in the NFL. And he's going right now as an RB36. So I love the return you can get on Rashad Penny at his ADP. And we saw it with Miles Sanders. This can happen. He can be an RB1 regardless of where his draft capital is currently. Our next player here, we have a running back that I'm profiling similar to what Ramondre Stevenson did last season for the Patriots. He too was going outside of the top 24, finished as a top 12 running back on the season, and that is because of receptions, receiving volume. That is what we're looking for when we're looking for at these running backs in this area being drafted to be able to give us a big season with receptions. That can really elevate things and get you into that tier. That's exactly what happened for Stevenson, and that's exactly what can happen for Javonte Williams, who's currently going as the running back 29 in the early parts of the 7th round. So we obviously have the ACL tear from last season. Him and Breece Hall, those are major concerns. We haven't seen running backs be able to return great value on their first season back from a torn ACL. But the difference is Javonte Williams is an RB29 right now. Breece Hall is going around, close to the top 12. This is very clearly baked into Williams' ADP, and differently from Breece Hall, he's cleared for contact. He's on the field. There's no injury designation for Javonte Williams. Now, Sean Payton said they'll give him some off days. They're not going to be giving him, the full workload in training camp that they would if he wasn't carrying this ACL tear into the season. But, the fact that he's on the field in training camp and he's participating in a full padded practice today, that's great news. I know there's concerns about this, but again, where he's being drafted, that's baked into this. And that gives us a great opportunity here because there is a significant opportunity to be productive in this current offense for the Broncos with Sean Payton stepping in and then Joe Lombardi coming in as the offensive coordinator. If you look at the previous, 8 seasons here of running backs for Sean Payton's offense, they all ranked, their RB1 ranked top 10 in receptions in every single season except for 2016, it looks like. That was the only season outside the top 10, but that was because they had 2 running backs who finished with 40-plus receptions. Then from a fantasy perspective, Sean Payton's running back has only finished outside the top 12 once, and it was Mark Ingram who missed a few games and actually finished 9th in fantasy points per game. So this is an incredibly valuable opportunity for a running back in this offensive scheme. It is one that's very suited to check the ball down. Williams, when he was on the field last season, had a very high target rate. And for Russell Wilson, he was actually a quarterback that targeted running backs at one of the highest rates in the league, which was very surprising to see last season, and very good for Javonte Williams heading into this year with a coach who's very susceptible to checking the ball down and especially to his running backs. You look at Joe Lombardi in his last 2 seasons, he was with the Chargers. Austin Eckler, what did he do? He turned in an RB2 and RB1 season, and last year led running backs with 107 receptions. Look, there's far too much upside here in Williams, and again, this is something we haven't seen before from this type of injury, but where his ADP is and the opportunity this offense provides for running backs traditionally, this is exactly a guy you want to draft at his current ADP. All you zero RB guys out there, these are the types of running backs you should absolutely be targeting, and I think Williams is one that can return on his ADP, and quite frankly, at this ADP, there's very little risk. Last guy up, one that's a little bit less exciting, but I'm kind of feeling similar vibes here. I shouldn't say it's not very similar, but Tony Pollard was a guy that was being drafted as an RB3 and ended up being a top 12 back on the season. James Conner seems to be a player, much like Pollard, that is going overlooked. Pollard was overlooked because he was obviously in a 2-headed backfield that was led by Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke was the guy scoring the touchdowns as well, but Pollard still managed to return a top 12 season. For James Conner, he's going as the RB25. He's going at the end of the 5th round. He finished last year as the RB20, but was actually a top 12 running back in fantasy points per game. He was the RB10 in fantasy points per game. So we've seen what he can do in this offense. And even better, we've seen what he can do when Kyler Murray isn't available. When Kyler Murray went down with a season-ending injury, he was the RB5 in fantasy points per game, averaging over 20 touches per game between his receptions and his rushing attempts, averaged 109 all-purpose yards, and he scored 3 touchdowns in those 4 games. This is an offense that's probably going to be driven behind James Conner, especially with DeAndre Hopkins being let go. Now the options at the receiver spots are Marquise Brown, Rondell Moore, and Greg Dortch, like you guys saw in the earlier graphic there. So there's a lot of opportunity for James Conner with this offense that's being led by Colt McCoy and could be led by Colt McCoy for a vast majority of the season. We also see this team make a change, obviously at the head coach spot, and in turn that'll change the offensive coordinator to Drew Petzing, who steps in as the OC. He was formerly with the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings, so that means he was working under Kevin Stefanski over there in Cleveland and in Minnesota. He was the quarterback's coach last year. And this is a guy who was under an offense that led great running games. When you look at Nick Chubb and Dalvin Cook in those 2 stops, those two guys were two of the best rushers in the NFL during those times. Now, what's even better for us when we're looking at drafting James Conner is the alternatives. Like, there's a complete lack of alternatives at the running back spot or even change of pace options. Keontae Ingram, Corey Clement, Tyson Williams. Tyson Williams, I'm surprised he's still in the league. I know he turned a couple good games in last year, but Williams found himself basically off the roster pretty quickly in Baltimore. Clement is a guy that's getting up there in age and hasn't really been very relevant for the last couple of seasons. And then Keontae Ingram could potentially carve out a receiving role of maybe some sorts, but even when he was given opportunity when Conner missed time, didn't really make very much of it. For Connor, efficiency isn't going to be the name of the game. I mean, he averaged a 3.3% breakaway run rate, which was 42nd, 4.3 yards per carry. This Cardinals team offensively isn't going to be great, but we saw the Chicago Bears be a team that wasn't great. They still ran the ball a ton. I think that's going to be the case here when you look at the lack of skill at the quarterback position. This is a player that's got over 71% opportunity share last season, which was 8th at the position. And then as well, we've seen it in years past. James Conner's the guy that when given opportunities inside the 5, he can push the pile and he can convert those. He's had 26 inside the 5 carries the last 2 seasons, turn that into 14 touchdowns. I'm not sure there's anyone that's been better converting their opportunities than James Conner the last couple of years. So I love that for him. And as well, like we talked about, there's still a receiving profile for this guy, especially with a quarterback that isn't as mobile as Kyler Murray. You're going to see more check down opportunities for him. I think he averaged somewhere close to 5 receptions a game in the time that he spent with Colt McCoy to close out the season. So opportunity here is fantastic. I know you're going to overlook this offense because, it's probably going to be the worst team in the league this season. They're not going to be able to be in a lot of positive game scripts, but that doesn't matter because this is a guy that'll be on the field for all 3 downs. And quite frankly, I'm surprised he's going outside the top 24 considering where his floor is at. And we already know his ceiling can be a top 12 guy. He's done it in the past. All right, those are 3 running backs that are currently going as RB3's that I think can finish the year as a top 12 back on the season. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to let me know. Subscribe to the channel, get those those notifications on. We're almost at 30,000 subscribers. I think we're like 90 shy now. So really appreciate all of you guys subscribing. We're gonna have plenty of content coming to you guys. Like I mentioned, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday and Sunday is how we'll be moving here with our fantasy football content. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.